All right, good evening. I will now call the July 11th, 2023 meeting of the Ben Lapine School Board of Directors to order. I'd like to introduce our participants this evening. To my immediate left, Vice Chair Marcus LeGrand, Director Amy Tatum, Director Cameron Fisher. It's her first board meeting. And then Director Shirley Olson. I am Melissa Barnes-Delakia, Chair of the board. And then to my immediate right, Superintendent Steve Cook, Deputy Superintendent Lauren Nordquist, and Board Clerk Janet Bojanowski. We have Erin Trimble and Hannah Westfall joining us for ASL interpretation, and a Spanish interpretation of the meeting is being provided on the BLS School Board YouTube page. We'll now move to item number 2, the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand, remove your hats, and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll now move into the review of the agenda. Dr. Cook, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Fellow board members, are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing no requests for changes, we will proceed with the agenda as noticed. We'll now move to item number 4, which is election of board officers for the 2023-24 school year. I will open the floor for nominations.
I move to nominate Melissa Barnes-Delakia as board chair. Should I do them separately? Yep. Yep.
Thank you. Director Tatum has moved and Director Fisher has seconded. We will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And I will abstain. Motion passes 4-0 with 1 abstention. We will now entertain motions for vice chair.
I move to nominate Marcus LeGrand as board vice chair.
I second.
Thank you. Director Tatum has moved. Director Olson has seconded. Let the minutes show that Director Chadwick has joined and will be included in this vote. All in favor of nominating Marcus LeGrand as the board vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion passes 5-0 with 1 abstention. Thank you. We'll now move into public comment. Thank you. All right. Sorry, I had to get a couple things straight. This is the time provided for individuals to address the board. Public comment requests are accepted in advance via Google Form until 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting for both in-person and virtual comment. Individuals may also sign up for public comment on the day of the meeting on a space available basis in alignment with Government Process 6, GP6. In-person sign-up will be accepted at the boardroom door until 5:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting. This is a new practice. Previously, it was in advance, and we feel like we are far enough away from the pandemic that we can make this a little bit more accessible, and so people always are welcome to sign up in advance for public comment if they want to make sure that they make it into the limit, or they're welcome to sign up at the door as well. We would like to say that we do value this communication from students, from families and staff and community members, but just a reminder that it is not a conversation with the board. This is a board meeting being held in public, but it is not a board meeting being held with the public. Members of the public, should they wish to communicate with board members more extensively, are welcome to reach out to us in writing, and different board members may make themselves available for phone calls, to meet in person, to have a Zoom meeting, et cetera. We will open for public comment and hear from stakeholders on the topics in the order that they appear on the agenda. Our policy is to typically allow up to 2 minutes per speaker until the time cap has been reached for that agenda item. We typically allow up to 10 minutes of comments per agenda item and 10 minutes of comments on non-agendized items as a whole for a maximum of 45 minutes of public comment during a meeting. A timer is provided on the large screens and in Zoom to ensure every speaker receives updates during the presentation on remaining time. So please do notice that, and it changes colors as it goes along. If the speaker goes over time or if the speaker's message is not in adherence with our policies, for example, being personally directed, abusive, discriminative, repetitive, or off-topic, I may ask the speaker to cease and terminate that speaker's privilege to address the board. All right. Let me open my spreadsheet real quick with our new system. Hopefully I won't be too clunky here. And then the first person I will be calling is Adam Cruz to speak on Bend Tech Academy. And please let me know if I pronounced your name correctly or not.
Hi, I'm Adam Cruz and will be a junior next school year. I've attended Bend Tech for 2 years now and love all the help you can receive for career planning, the career tracks you can choose from, and the relationships you get to have with all the teachers. Just this past year, I got real world experience in marketing by setting up a social media campaign, designing a company logo, making a SWOT analysis, and printing shirts and other branded gear. I have a 4.0 GPA and strive to be valedictorian of my class. When you look at my transcripts or tests, like the pre-ACT, it still says Marshall High School on it. If this isn't changed, I will have to consider changing schools to get rid of the alternative designation in Marshall High School on my transcripts when applying for college. There have been many times when I've been talking to people about where I go to school and they don't know what BTA is. When I explain to them where it's located, they say, isn't that where Marshall is or the bad kid school is? And even after I explain what the school is now and that it's changed, they still think that Marshall is this school or is two schools in one. Please approve this change, and thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Next, we will hear from Jennifer Cruz.
Hello, board members. My name is Jennifer Cruz, and I am the parent of my son, Adam, going into 11th grade at Bend Tech. I'm also a member of the BTA Site Council, consisting of a group of parents, teachers. Better? Okay. Okay.
Just so that our video, our streaming captures your
Gotcha.
comments.
Okay. Board members, my name is Jennifer Cruz, and I am a parent of my son, Adam, going into 11th grade at Bend Tech Academy. I'm also a member of the BTA Site Council, consisting of a group of parents, teachers, administrators, and students of the school. And I'm speaking with you today to ask two big things: officially change the name of Bend Tech Academy at Marshall High School, and also change the designation from an alternative education school to a choice option school. The ODE did task the Site Council with improving the school's program and professional development of the staff. And when we first met, we did something different by discussing what obstacles were hindering the school and staff. We looked at the Youth Truth surveys, and we could see that the CTE model does work. The students are engaged and challenged academically. So why aren't we having a waiting list for enrollment? The biggest reason is the perceived stigma throughout the Bend-La Pine School District, as well as the community of Bend. That's a stumbling block for BTA. Because of the name Marshall, it's still attached to Bend Tech Academy. Parents don't pursue this choice option, and counselors don't recommend the school. Throughout Bend, I've had conversations with so many people that this was the burnout, last-ditch effort at education school. The stigma of Marshall High School is so prevalent that even during the spring, KTVZ ran a story about BTA receiving a $500 grant to teach students about printing t-shirts. The comments were brutal, with one even commenting that they should have been learning how to make license plates to prepare for their future in prison. The other issue that we have is it's still being designated as an alternative education school. And when students are applying to post-secondary programs, on their transcript, it shows Marshall as an official alternative school. And again, most of these think of the students as at risk or lower education quality. We're asking for three big things: change the name universally, all BLS communication. We're also asking to re-educate all of the high school and middle school counselors on what BTA is. And the third is to change our official designation to a choice option school. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Sharon Miller.
Hello, thanks for having us here today. I'm Sharon Miller. I am also a member of the BTA Site Council and the mother of 2 BTA students, Gabe and Zach Miller. I appreciate the positive impact that BTA staff has had on my children's lives over the past 3 years. I am here tonight to provide additional context regarding the request to change the name of our high school. Marshall High School carries a negative connotation and reputation within our community. The frustration expressed from BTA students, staff, and parents is evident when we constantly have to clarify that BTA is no longer associated with Marshall High School as it used to be known. To gauge the extent of the community stigma, we surveyed our students, our staff, and our families. One of the questions we asked was, how do you think Marshall High School is perceived by the community? Sadly, the results revealed that 0% of our students felt it was perceived positively or somewhat positively in the Bend community. Only 10% responded with neutral, while an overwhelmingly 90% of our students felt the community perceived their school as negative or very negative. How can you help? As already has been said, I'm gonna just repeat a couple things here. Our 2023 graduating class is the first class to solely represent BTA students. When BTA was created as a small choice school 4 years ago, we should have submitted an application to the ODE to remove the alternative school label. When choosing BTA 4 years ago and 3 years ago, my students were unaware their transcripts would reflect the alternative school status. If left unchanged, this will negatively impact their college applications and scholarship opportunities. Therefore, we urgently request the immediate removal of the alternative school designation. Additionally, we request the elimination of at Marshall from the school name, which will pave the way to complete the rebrand to Bend Tech Academy. It's important to note that the Marshall name does not hold any significance or ties to our community. It was named after the street it is located on, which in turn was named after Chief Justice John Marshall. Moreover, there's a historical precedence for renaming schools associated with John Marshall, given his reputation for being a prolific slave owner. Thank you once again for your valuable time and consideration in this matter.
Thank you. That concludes the speakers that are speaking on item 9A, which is the renaming of Marshall High School. That, just so people know, we'll have a couple of reports, consent for action, and that'll be taken up later in the board meeting. For our next set of comments, these are regarding Highland Elementary, and our first speaker is Lisa Baker.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Baker, and I am one of the almost 1,500 people who have signed a petition requesting that the decision to reassign 3 Highland teachers be reevaluated. I am the mother of 2 young men and have had a child in the class of each of these 3 teachers. Highland is more than just a school for many of us. It is a family, and we count on each other to ensure that our students get an amazing education. Storyline isn't a run-of-the-mill teaching program and requires experience, training, and teamwork to be done correctly. Becky Erickson, Cami Green, and Alicia Vickery have all been at Highland for many years and have the expertise and training necessary to do the job right. I have spent countless hours in each of their classrooms volunteering, which is something most parents at Highland do. Because of this, I have been able to see their level of expertise, the ease with which they are able to incorporate Storyline into learning, and their dedication and care for the children we entrust them with. I can't see a situation where any of the teachers would do anything deserving of this action. I don't know exactly what happened, but I do know what I've heard, and it doesn't make the district look good. Each of these teachers belong at Highland. They have the experience and skills needed. They are not replaceable, and they are Highland family. There will be 5th graders starting in the fall, and the rug has been pulled out from under them. You were all elected to ensure that our children's education and well-being was at the forefront. This decision certainly doesn't feel like their best interest or the best interest of Highland was even a consideration. I am respectfully requesting that the decision be reversed and Becky Erickson, Cami Green, and Alicia Vickery be reinstated into the roles that they've held for many years at Highland. These teachers deserve this, the students deserve this, and the school will be better for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jenny Jones.
Hello. I should start by saying I'm really nervous. This is really out of my comfort level, but I'm here on behalf of my daughter and all of the students at Highland. The decision to transfer the 3 teachers goes against what is best for our children in every way imaginable. I am asking the school board to reinstate the teachers to their former roles. I am also very respectfully requesting that the board does an internal investigation on how the district leadership dealt with their investigation and any attempts to resolve the conflict and culture. These are expert-level masters of storyline who have traveled internationally to teach other storyline teachers their skills. They cannot take their skills and transfer to another school within the district and be using their skills to the best of their abilities. Highland is the only school in the district that uses everyday math. Every other school uses Bridges for its math program. Any incoming teachers will likely have little to no storyline experience, and they are unlikely to have been trained in everyday math. Who can train them to teach everyday math at the 5th grade level? The only 2 teachers who teach it in the district were just transferred. These are very different teaching methods. It is a most destructive approach to solving a toxic culture, and our children are the collateral damage. Meeting the teachers and parents in the middle with a probationary year for the new principal to see if they can have a change in culture to a more positive one seems to me like a reasonable approach to bringing both sides together. Again, the decision to transfer these teachers will have negative ramifications on our students and family and community for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Ashley Testerman.
Hi there, my name is Ashley Testerman. I'm an 8-year Highland mom, and I have an upcoming 5th grader. A little over a year ago, our lives were rocked pretty hard when my ex-husband, their father, was arrested, and I was given full custody overnight. My daughter's life was forever changed. I went from having a little girl who absolutely adored going to school to one who could barely walk through the front door because she was enduring a serious trauma. And the only way that she got through that front door was because Alicia Vickery was waiting for her on the other side. This woman not only educated my daughter, but she gave her a safe space to learn and a place to endure her tragedy while she got her education. Couldn't have gotten through last year without that woman. And to whoever made the decision to strip my daughter of her teacher, I ask you why, and who are you serving? Because you're obviously not serving our educators, our teachers who stood by us through the pandemic, who endured online long-distance learning, and who, when they returned to in-person learning, endured behavioral issues likes of which we have never seen from both students and parents alike, because collectively we all went through a tragedy, and we all needed a little bit more grace. And you are not serving the parents because we have been begging you to reinstate these teachers, and we have been met with silence. And you are not serving our students, and I can prove that because my daughter is at home and she is devastated. Not only that she will not get her teacher back for her 5th grade year that she was promised by the district, but that also some of her friends might not be coming back because of the decisions made by adults who didn't factor her in and yet again left her as collateral damage. I am asking you to reinstate these teachers. It seemed like a flex of power what happened on the last day of school at Highland Elementary, and I am asking you to change your approach. I am asking you to reinstate our teachers and show my daughter and the rest of the students that they are more than just an afterthought, that they matter, and that they are first and foremost thought of by this board. My daughter wants to be a teacher someday. show her that on the other side of that journey, it's not a pack of wolves waiting for her to make a mistake, but that she will be supported by a group of people that will help her serve her community someday. I'm asking that from me and my daughter. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment on Highland Elementary. Oh, very top, did I miss? Oh, no, I'm so sorry. I started partway down. Next, we will have Guthrie Brown.
Hello, my name is Guthrie Brown. I am becoming a 5th grader in Miss Green's class at Highland, and I would like to tell you why I think that you should reconsider the transfer. Highland is the #1 rated elementary school in Bend. The reason is because we are one of the only schools who uses Scottish storyline method and does an all-school storyline. The success is because of the teachers you decided to transfer. They are the leaders of the storyline, the foundation of our school. Storyline has allowed me to learn in so many of these amazing opportunities and to learn in such a different way. Miss Green is the most caring teacher I've ever had. Her classroom supports all kinds of learners. She teaches so that in a way that everyone can learn. Miss Green leads all of the storyline and makes our school so much fun. She dresses up at culmination and really gets us into our characters. She is the best teacher I have ever had and the teacher everybody would like to have when they are in 4th and 5th grade. We have collected over 1,500 signatures of people who want the teachers back at Highland. Please reconsider the transfer.
Thank you, Guthrie, and thank you for coming and speaking. We really appreciate it when student speakers come. All right, now we have concluded the speakers on Highland Elementary, and we have a speaker on commute options, Brian Potwin.
Good evening. My name is Brian Potwin. I'm the Executive Director of Commute Options. Our mission is to increase access to transportation options across Oregon. We do this in a variety of different ways, programmatically, through service-based education, encouragement. But first I wanted to take a moment and express our sadness of the recent loss of one of the students of Ben Lake School District, of the fatal bicycle crash that we had. It was a sad day and continues to be a sad day for us. But we can help provide solutions through education and encouragement with our Safe Routes to School program. It's not going to completely fix the issue that is going on right now, but I want to make sure the school board is aware that we are a resource. We're here to help. What we do is we come into the schools, we teach bicycle and pedestrian safety education, we talk about rules of the road. We also work with adults through our Oregon Friendly Driver program. So we're working with drivers, we're working with students, we're working with the whole community. Vice Chair LeGrand actually came out to Ruby Bridge's Walk to School Day this last November, and we really appreciate the support. These types of activities encourage active transportation, which we need to continue to do for our students. So I'm here today just to make sure you all know we're here to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. For board comment, as I mentioned earlier, we will be taking a vote on the questions raised regarding Ben Tech Academy. Regarding Highland Elementary, I encourage people to reach out directly to Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook has been making himself available to meet individually with concerned community members. I have also made myself available to meet with people, so you're welcome to reach out to me as well. And then on commute options, thank you very much. I too have had the opportunity to do the commute options as a parent. So with that, we will move into item number 6, which is the board chair report. And the board chair report is going to be very short this evening. It's summertime, but the one piece that I did want to report on that I was able to do over the last month is meet with the people who are working on the Coalition for the Houseless, and just talking to them about how the school district can continue to be a thought partner and provide information. They were appreciative of data that we've been able to share. Sandy Schmidt is our McKinney-Vento liaison, and she was able to pull data around our students that are houseless and share it with that commission. And they were very appreciative of that, so I wanted to let Superintendent Cook know that. And they are in the process of moving really their work from the city to COIC as the oversight committee. And so there's nothing for us to do except know that that is happening and that they have their new strategic plan, and they plan to be working to transfer that work over. And I shared with them the one piece that I'd heard from people, which was around transportation for our kids and transportation options. But if there's ever information, we have people ready to listen and would love to hear any needs that we have from a school district perspective. Chris Ogren is ready and willing to listen. And that is it. We'll now move to the superintendent report.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delacqua. I have two things I want to share tonight, both of them focused on building administrative work over this last year and then going into next year. I'm very pleased, actually three things, but I'm going to let one of them go to, it's mentioned later in the agenda, so I'm going to pass that one on to Dr. Nordquist to let her share when we talk about task force updates. The first one I want to talk about is the Center for Educational Leadership training on leading equitable schools that all of our building administrators participated in last year. A very extensive training that went throughout the year with about 40 hours of training and how to help us guide the implementation of our goals and how to make sure that every student gets to feel heard from and has voice in our schools, and how to best provide opportunities for those most marginalized and those students that we don't often hear from the most. And I would tell you that that's training when delivered systemically, the way we did it and participated in this year, has very, very powerful outcomes, and I'm excited for that work. It took the entire year to deliver all of this, and every bit of the training that they went through included action work that they did in their own schools to operationalize these goals, and they align very, very well with the goals of the district. And so I'm excited to share with you that I would say that that was a large success and that we look for more work on that and how to extend that work. The second thing I want to share with you is also along the lines of training for administrators. It's time for us to start thinking about our leadership launch for the 23-24 school year, which is not that far away. A couple of 3 weeks, I think, is how quickly that's coming up in the first week of August. And so we're at that time, and we have two foci for that work: a culture of belonging and safety on day one, and a culture of leading and learning on day two. Would invite any and all of you to come. If you want to come and participate, we might have to notice that as a meeting, but if we get 4 of you anyway, but we'd gladly welcome you there to be a participant in that as we tighten up our focus for this year and continue to do our work to increase our sense of belonging in our schools, to increase our overall sense of safety and community in each of our schools, and to impact teaching and learning across the district. And so I want to make sure you're aware of that, August 8th and 9th, 7th and 8th, excuse me. So not that far away, believe it or not. We've got John Crownapple and Doug, John Crownapple, the name of the book. Belonging in a Culture of Dignity. And the second day is Doug Pfister, I believe is his last name, which is Trust and Inspire Leadership. And so that's out of the Covey model. And so very excited about the grounding that we'll be doing with that work as we move into setting the foundation for our next year. And you'll see this all aligns very well as we start talking about the work of the task force later on in the agenda, how important it is that we're becoming as clear and coherent in our expectations across the district for how all of that is to be implemented, so that it's those clear expectations are experienced across all of our 33 schools. Glad to answer any questions.
On the student voice piece, do we have the Student Voice Council lined up for joining us at board meetings in the 23-24 school year?
We do. Their first meeting in which they're participating, I think, is, they will be joining us. Yes, it's not aligned yet. I know what that signal means. We've got work to do on that yet, but yes, they will be participating.
And my question with the administrative training, is this information that is going to be able to be disseminated to the rest of the troops? Because I know, like last year with RJ, we only gave it to the administrators. We were able to have an opportunity for the rest of the buildings to be able to get up to speed on some of those things that they're trained on.
Are you speaking speaking specifically about community partners? Or are you speaking more about staff in the schools beyond the administrative ranks?
Most beyond the staff. I mean, like I said, staff beyond.
Absolutely, yes. The alignment of this work it's not new and revolutionary. This is stuff that we believe in, and it's what we're doing is trying to make the implementation of our goals more seamless. And so the work that we're focusing on this year is not getting more focused on the what, but how we're going to make sure that that work is happening in all of our schools. Both of these days are, safety, belonging, those are not new words, right? Those are things we've been focusing on for the last 2 years, farther beyond that, actually, for quite some time. And so the goal is to make this more consistent, more coherent, and more aligned across the system. And so there's no secrets there. We'll make all that information would be available to anyone that would be interested.
I just want to add too that John Crownapple will continue to work with staff throughout the year. His organization has 4 full-day sessions, and the participants in those will be primarily our lead coaches and then an ICCL teacher leader from each building who's kind of the designated lead implementer at that building. So his major work at the school level will be with teaching staff, not with administrators.
Thank you.
All right, if there are no further questions, we will move to item number 8, which is our consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I second that motion. I made the motion. Oh my God. I made the motion to approve this agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. Vice Chair LeGrand has moved. Director Tatum has seconded. Are there any requests to remove anything from the consent agenda? Hearing no requests for changes, I will call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, 6-0. We'll now move into item number 9A, the renaming of Marshall High School. And our speaker is Katie Legacy.
Katie's not here, so I'm going to pinch hit for her. And before I start, I'm going to take a moment to both embarrass somebody that's here and draw attention to her because we have the fortune to have Lakeisha Clark, our incoming principal at Ben Tech Academy. She's sitting right out here. I think she's actually in the market for a house right now, if anybody's got some good tips, what she's really doing right now. But I'd also like all the people sitting in front of her to make sure you make eye contact with her. That's going to be a very important person in the conversation as we move forward. Okay, so I'm not going to go in great detail because our public commenters expressed very clearly what we've been working on with the site council pretty directly now for a few months. And I want to clarify a couple of things. This isn't a decision that the board makes. This is a decision that ODE makes, but has, as a prerequisite, requires board approval. And so what we're requesting for your consideration tonight is to give us the authority to approach ODE with an approved recommendation from administration by the board's approval to consider renaming Bentech Academy at Marshall to dropping the Marshall part of the name altogether. The second thing that was accurately portrayed in the request tonight for public comment was that currently the school still holds the alternative education designation. And that is actually our initial research that's designated by ODE. Our initial research on that was a little problematic, that it's the reason that they were a little, I would say a little reluctant when we started asking questions about that was was this a perception issue about how to get out of, how does test data apply to the path of the school as it relates to student test results? And when we clarified what we were talking about, they listened, and they're definitely open to the suggestion that this be looked into further. And I would tell you that this is absolutely what we would support as well. It is our recommendation that you all support these steps. I'm not sure totally why these steps didn't happen years ago. I'm not going to go into that. I don't know that that's relevant now. I think what's relevant now is that we take this approach. Right now, the designation of a choice school is accurate in how we're functioning, but it also carries with it the stigma, number one, of a label that is no longer accurate, and number two, the references to a school that has existed here for many years that was perceived of as a different set of standards and expectations for that school. And so after lots of conversations with site council and really what I would say is great feedback and student advocacy, that it became clear to us that this is something that we felt like it was our obligation to support and approach you all with this recommendation. And so I'm glad to answer any questions. It's not, we don't have to do a presentation or anything like that. I think the steps are simple. The application goes in, if so approved by the board tonight. The next steps would be to submit that request for consideration to ODE.
My question is when it becomes a choice school, because I'm positive about this, when it becomes a choice school, will we have the option to do a lottery just like the other choice schools, or is it gonna be something that we kind of roll in slowly, those type things? Because you look at the realms, you look at those different schools will be able to get into those, you look at the tag programs, you look at all those different things. Will this eliminate some of the students who normally probably possibly have the option and opportunity to go to that school?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. What you're actually asking about is the process for how students access option choice schools, whether we're talking about elementary schools such as a magnet school such as Highland or Westside Village, or to our choice high schools. And quite frankly, that, if you recall, that's a policy that we've got to take on for essentially updating what's those processes look like so that the access into schools of choice align better with the goals of both the board and the district, which this on its own level, that sounds very, I would say, simple. It's when you're balancing what I would say are goals that meet our equity needs and how we're going to best serve this community, along with choice, which choice alone without guidance can be somewhat problematic and can create gaps and opportunities for kids. And so threading the needle on that, there's two parts. First of all, Bentech Academy would be a choice school. They would have the same set of parameters as any other choice school in the district for how entrance happens. But moreover, we've got to do some work on that policy to get that policy a little better aligned to the goals that we have.
So if we vote tonight to change the designation, that then has to go to ODE for approval, how long is it going to take ODE to do that? Will it be in time for like our seniors entering Bentech Academy to have that ALO designation removed from their diplomas before they apply for college this year?
So there's two different timelines in there. Before they go to school, it's going to be close. And I have to qualify, we aren't making this decision. This is an ODE decision. We could get, who knows what we could get back from them. The last time we made an appeal to ODE for something like this, the turnaround time was a couple of months. And so is it possible, if all things go in a particular direction, that this could be addressed? It's possible. Absolutely, it's possible. We are committed to working with them to get them all the information they would need so that they don't see this as an attempt to, the biggest obstacle that we found was how test scores and designation are intertwined. And so the appeal to ODE for the opportunity to change that is what we've got to make sure they're clear on, is that this isn't some kind of chicanery on avoiding sanctions or anything like that.
Along that line, is there any possibility of retroacting of taking that designation off of previous seniors?
I'll be honest, that's a fantastic question I haven't even thought of. I love that question. We will make sure that we find out whether or not that's a possibility. Thank you for that question.
Yes.
Another question I have too, does it change any fundings in terms of what we see from the state based on in terms of if it's alternative ed school versus, does that change any funding requirements and also does in terms of different pieces?
No, it doesn't change the funding. Currently, Bentech Academy gets some additional funding from ESSA, which has to do with meeting certain benchmarks. So along with a number of our other schools, Bentech Academy is in that, but that's not impacted by its designation.
Along those lines, for the accountability piece, what does change in terms of the accountability? Is it that we are hitting then, or are we held to a higher threshold in terms of assessments?
That's a good question. I think that the biggest thing that they wanted to make sure we were not doing was avoiding some action by making the change. It would then be the same level of accountability that all of our other high schools in the district have. I do not anticipate I do believe I wish Dave were here. I think there's one factor in undergraduation that might be slightly different calculated with if you have an alternative high school designation, because it would have been it's the only alternative high school designated in the district, which complicates how students are assigned. Students that go to get their GED or those kinds of things, they're coded back to their sending high school because it's an alternative high school. That would be a blurry kind of factor that we would have to get some more data on, for sure.
So like the four-year cohort rate might be affected.
Exactly.
Do we know, I guess, where BTA does stand with the with test scores and the designation? Like, does BTA exceed the designation, or do their test scores exceed the designation as an alternative school? Are we there yet?
I think if I understand what you're asking Director Chadwick, is if you think of all the alternative schools in the state of Oregon, are they above average kind of thing? And the answer is yes, they outscore the average alternative high school. There are complications with it, and I think that's the biggest one, is the fact that how students are coded it's going to be like, I would expect, if this goes through, there's going to be some back and forth between us and ODE about coding of students in their 4-year cohort and their 5-year cohort, and how the graduation rates might be mucky for a couple of years.
Thank you.
All right. I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the district's request to change the name of Marshall High School to Ben Technical Academy and remove the alternative education designation.
I second that motion.
Thank you. Director Tatum has moved and Vice Chair LeGrand has seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I will move to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
All right, Lakeisha, we got work to do.
You got a new name for your school.
Well, maybe not yet, but we'll work on it.
Well, I will say, that was one of the graduations I got to go to this year, and it was pretty fabulous. So,
We're in your
excited for
corner.
your school. We'll now move on to item number 9B, which is the local option levy. As I introduced in our previous board meeting, I think that we have some real needs within the system of Ben Lapine schools that warrant our district exploring the possibility of a local option levy. These include the fact that the cost of living in Bend is in the double digits. It's significantly higher than the state average, but also includes things like the shortened school year that our students have, the high class sizes that we have in our 4th and up grades, some safety considerations. There's a variety of different things that we need to be thinking about for our school system. And I would like us to be able to ask the district directly to begin exploring a local option levy and to direct the superintendent to investigate that. That does not mean that we would have a local option levy. It means that they're investigating, that they'd really assess the system, look at what the real needs of the system are. They'd assess our community and where we are in terms of levies and the appetite to support something like this. And then the timing as well. But really being able to have that information and bring that back to us as a board. I do want to speak to the fact that in general, our direction of the superintendent is aligned to our board goals. And this is something that is outside of our board goals. That said, I believe as a board, this is something when we talk about fiduciary responsibility, I think this is a necessary thing for us to investigate in order for us to realize our board goals, and so therefore feel comfortable entertaining a motion to direct the superintendent on this, and I will entertain a motion. And we can have further discussion after we've had a motion in a second.
I move to authorize the district to investigate the options of a local option levy.
I second.
Thank you. Director Olson has moved and Director Fisher has seconded. Is there further discussion?
I would just like to reiterate that the extensive data search that you have done on your own with some very important statistics that we had a chance to review at the last meeting. And I want to thank you for that, Chair Delakia. And I requested some time to think about it and work through some of those questions. So I'm very supportive of that investigation.
Thank you. All right, hearing no further discussion, I will move to a vote. All in favor of authorizing the district to investigate the options of a local option levy, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously, 6-0. We'll now move into reports. We have one report tonight, and that is on the Culture and Climate Task Force update, and that will be led by Superintendent Cook, and I believe Deputy Superintendent
Yeah.
Nordquist as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. The first thing I would tell you that we've reported, at least in the superintendent's report, the kind of the progress that this task force is making. And I can tell you that both Dr. Nordquist and myself would rather it not be us, but it's July and we're not going to call in folks and ask them to come off of time away from the district to share some of the work that's been undertaken this past spring and early summer. But I can tell you that is something that we would very much like to share with the board once folks are kind of back in the swing of things. And I'm going to kick it to Dr. Nordquist so that she can talk a little bit about how this process has evolved with outside facilitation that is going well, and we have representation from certified and classified across the district participating on this task force. And if you recall, this all came from data of what what the system is telling us is going well and not so well, and how to best meet those needs. And so I feel like we've been talking a lot about meeting needs lately, and this is kind of launching us into part of that conversation. So I'm going to ask Dr. Nordquist to share briefly kind of that work, and then I'd like an opportunity for task force members to come back at a future meeting and spend some time going into more detail about the work that's been going on so far.
Yeah, just a reminder that we probably started visioning this task force by mid-year last year, and working side by side with the Bend Education Association and OSEA, really fine-tuned that. As Steve mentioned, we have I think it's 35 members of the task force, and at OSEA's request, we focused our classified folks. They're all educational assistants, feeling like those are the classified folks that are kind of closest in their work with the students. We have classroom teachers, we have learning specialists, we have language specialists, we have SST specialists, nurse in the group, and then building administrators, and then the executive directors, level leaders, and Steve and I are on the task force. So it's a really great mix of people. And I think that, like many groups, I would characterize our first two meetings as kind of, storming, forming, norming. And I think there were some people who felt kind of frustrated because it felt like we were in this big area. And then by the third meeting, at the beginning of June, things really started to coalesce, and great conversations, and getting to maybe more concrete next steps. And I think that was something that was really important to people, though it was really important to have the context. So, not just come and start throwing solutions up against the wall, but to really do a lot of work around problem identification. We did a lot of iceberg work about what's below the surface, about here's what we're seeing, but what's way below the surface. And again, I know I mentioned before, but complimenting the facilitation of Whitney Swander. Whitney has done an outstanding job both of facilitating and then between sessions, being able to take all the work that we do and synthesize it and bring it back to us in very digestible ways, from sheets of paper up all over the room to some really concrete information. One of the things that I was really impressed by, we had originally planned just to meet 3 times this spring and then continue the work in the fall. And basically the task force said, no, this is too important. And so we kind of took a straw poll, and almost everyone said, sure, we'll come the last week of school. We had a 4-hour session, 3 days before school got out. So people leaving their classrooms, getting ready for subs in that environment because they felt it was so important. And I wanted to just summarize, by the end of our 4th session, this is just a summary of our accomplishments. We reached consensus on 4 to 5 big rock strategies per level. So elementary was different from middle school, which was different from high school. And those are organized by short-term, mid-range, and long-range strategies. So 1 or 2, no more than 2 in each category. The identification of strategies that required few additional resources, and those that were more resource intensive and require shifting resources or identifying new source of revenue. So we had over on this side, we could do this with some time, professional development, we can make this happen. This one, often things that required more bodies or very significant training or more in-depth community partnerships. Those are more long-range strategies. And then we reached very strong consensus across all 3 levels about our most immediate priority. And I'm quoting Whitney here. We are focusing on starting the school year strong, with the task force creating messaging, resources, and emphasis to recalibrate around a system of consistent behavior expectations and responses that are explicitly taught and reinforced across schools, grade levels, and roles. And so those of you who are familiar with multi-tiered systems of support, or PBIS, essentially on our own, without using those words, That's what the group said is our most important priority to start the year off right. And people feeling that's so important that it starts the year, that the vast majority of the task force put their hands up in there and said, sure, we'll work on August 1st. We have a 6-hour session scheduled on the 1st, trying to get things ready for schools at the launch of the school year. And so this will be work that administrators then on the 7th and 8th during our breakout sessions in the afternoon will be talking about this work. And we'll have small work teams going throughout August to try to be ready so that schools can, you know how that is. You start on the first day with the expectations and teaching and reteaching and reinforcing and the things that we expect of everything, and building those with students, building those classroom and school-wide expectations along with our students. We don't know exactly how it'll look next year, but what we see is the large group coming together, maybe it's 3 or 4 times a year, and thinking about what's data we can collect around the success of the implementation. How is it going? What kind of formative tools could we use to see how the work is progressing? And then lots of the more nuts and bolts work being done maybe by smaller work groups by level. I mean, there are some things that in the elementary priorities, for example, that are really unique to elementary school. There's, at each of the levels. So it might make more sense to have smaller work groups, but very exciting work. And I just can't say enough about the dedication of all the people who've been involved. It's been really fun to get to know them better, and people have worked together really, really well. Oh, I guess I could entertain questions if there are any too.
Dr. Nordquist, one of the things that I think board members have highlighted or asked about as we've been facing this challenge is how we can engage our families as partners in this work. Are there going to be opportunities for that?
Yes, and in fact, at the elementary level, for example, that is one of the solutions, stronger partnerships with schools and families. So I think families are the people who could have the expertise to help us think about how to do that. So absolutely.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess I have a question with regard to when you were talking about kind of fewer resource options on the one half, in addition to family engagement and kind of setting the precedent first day of school. What were some other examples that came up?
Oh, let's see. I was trying to find them all today, and I could not find Whitney's Google Doc. One of the things I can think of at the high school was the idea of teachers, small groups of teachers choosing a high leverage practice that really makes a difference. I'll just give you an example that wasn't part of their discussion, but using, I'm going to get the term wrong, but selecting and sequencing as you have students share answers and participate. You're walking around, you're hearing how Steve is solving the problem, and Amy might be great to go next. That is not a rocket science strategy. It just takes a lot of practice to make it part. And so teachers identifying a high leverage strategy that increases classroom involvement, increases engagement, and saying, we really want to work on this together. And really what they need is a very little direct instruction and lots of practice time and opportunities to observe each other and give feedback. So that was an example.
I can give one. That was a very deep and specific conversation at the high school level, and that was the importance of developing robust professional learning communities as an extension of how do you get teachers working together on a common topic. And there's, on a scale of 0 to 5, there are schools that have robust PLCs, and there are schools that don't have that as a point of focus, and it's just not the nature. And this idea of why not, some of the best professional learning can happen from the people sitting right next to you if you do it in a structured way so it doesn't happen in pockets, and then some folks miss out because they just aren't given the opportunity. And so building, like when you start talking about this kind of grid of levels, elementary, middle, and high. And then this short-term, or I guess more like immediate, short-term, midterm, long-term. PLCs would take some time. It's not resource extensive. It takes some training, but it would at least be, and by midterm, we mean 1 to 2 years, long-term, 2+ years. Depending on where they are on that scale of 0 to 5, it might be something we could just refresh. It might be something that takes at least a year or two, or it might be something that takes an extensive amount of time because it's just a foreign concept for the way the school is functioning. And creating the systemic dialogue around those conversations is what's going to create that common set of coherent expectations across the system. And that's one of the things that this task force has shared, is that when there are people that will say, that's not my experience at all, what you're talking about, and having dialogue around the variance of what that experience might look like across the system with 33 schools, 2,400 employees, with not just certified teachers or not just administrators, but everybody in the room together, has been very robust and very, very exciting.
So
Oh, I'm sorry, Amy.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, because one of the things that I've heard from teachers over and over again when we talk about like, professional development Wednesdays, is that they wish they had more time to sit with their peers in unstructured professional development to have these types of conversations. So it would seem like, as we're talking about lifting up teachers who have really good classroom strategies, that would be something that we would be then giving them time to do on their professional development Wednesdays. Is that?
Yes, and when we say, I think unstructured is a scary word, because there are some groups that if you gave them 90 minutes of unstructured time, 2 people would dominate the entire conversation, and it could be about, something unrelated to this process. So thinking about, there are protocols and norms that help still give a lot of time for that in-depth conversation, but, having a facilitator, having norms that you hold yourself accountable to, having an accountability piece, those kinds of, having enough structure so that it's productive, but not so much structure that people don't feel like they can have authentic learning conversations.
So would it be letting leaders within each school facilitate rather than the district telling schools how they have to do it, if it is building up practice, like best practice of one teacher within a school?
Yeah, I think are you talking about structures, Amy?
As you talk about things like facilitators.
Yeah, I think that giving resources to people, not like everybody on this Wednesday for 10 minutes do this, but giving templates of structures that work. We have a group of us going to the Adaptive Schools training this summer, and a part of that work is tools for facilitation that then we can make as resources and share throughout the district. Because there are some people who have already lots of skills, and we have other leaders who would need that kind of support.
So I'm going to say back what I heard, and you tell me whether or not I'm getting it. I'm hearing that the task force is working on developing a uniform set of expectations that will be articulated and communicated so that everybody can own them, that they're coming up with big rock strategies at different levels, and that they're going to be working on internalizing and developing those, and that those strategies aren't just reactive strategies to behavior, but actually are strategies to increase engagement, with the theory of action being that would decrease behaviors.
Yeah, I think a lot of our work, the attention turned very quickly to adult actions because we had to think about what we can control. And again, a lot of consensus around that. That does not solve the issue of students with very, very severe needs. At the elementary level, we talked about something that has some resource implications, but just even more classified EA support, so that if a child needs one person to be with that child, there's somebody to be with other children. That does have resource implications, something that we're looking at, and we're also struggling. We struggle to hire enough. I mean, we had open positions all year for educational assistants. So even with the funding, we're still struggling to fill all those positions.
And I would just add one thing that's, I would anticipate will be a fairly, well, it's simple for me to say it. Just a common set of how we record discipline issues in our schools. We've got so many different ways in how those are recorded and whether they're even captured. And depending on what school you go to, you might have something go into your permanent record, and another school, same event happens and it goes into a Google Doc. So just something as simple as that. And now how then we transition to a consistent set of expectations. That doesn't cost us more money, but that's definitely something that's going to take some implementation strategy and time.
So in other words, what you're saying is that student outcomes don't change until adults' attitudes change.
Not just attitude. First of all, yes, attitudes, but then secondly, then what are their actions going to change, right?
Yep.
Can I just ask a quick question? So, I mean, for me, this sounds like kind of like a, it's a big change management undertaking. And I guess, are there plans in place to dedicate more time to kind of like build this structure? Yeah, and if there is, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Keena, one of the things I'd say, just thinking about when I talk about multi-tiered systems of support, I think it would be important to say that's not completely new thinking for any of our schools. I think that there was a lot of loss in terms of practices with the pandemic. I mean, when we were in schools for so long and then coming back under very odd circumstances and things, but in terms of people understanding the basic systems of MTSS, strongest at elementary, probably it's the newest learning at high school. I think a lot of, we still have many high school people that when they hear PBIS, they think about like the tickets, which is not what it is. And so, yes, there is going to be time, and as when Steve referenced our training about learning equitable schools, we really, our theme for this year is really deeper, slower work. It's not, we're still working really hard on leading equitable schools, and that means having multi-tiered systems of support in place, both in terms of student experiences and in terms of student learning, and having individuals at the building level, at every building level, not just administrators, but teacher leaders who understand these systems and lead these teams is really important.
I think the other piece I'm hearing is the PLC piece of helping, creating the systems and structures to make sure our educators can continue to tackle these issues and use the collective genius in their schools. I still come back to wondering, I hear the piece about the task force establishing common expectations and helping to clarify for our teaching teams, our educators, our EAs, what the common set of behavior expectations are. My lingering wondering is how the task force is thinking about making sure that there's that consistency in a trauma-informed way. Like, I think one of the things that we see, and we see this everywhere, this is not unique to schools right now. These behaviors are everywhere. But a very common thing is an out of proportion reaction to something is like a trauma. It's a trauma reaction that we see in schools with kids all the time. And so when that happens, how are we dealing with that? And how are we going to hit the ground strong with a common understanding that also has the systems of support to make sure it's effective?
That's a great question. And I would tell you, I'm going to answer the question by giving you an example of exactly what you're talking about. I'm not going to tell you the strategies. I'm just going to tell you how this played out. We had a couple of task force members get really ramped up about restorative practices. I mean, ramped up, that we're failing to hold students accountable on a level that all we're doing is going around and talking things through, and there's no accountability for behaviors. Now, there's also some frustration is that when administrators are dealing with student behaviors, that they're not cycling back to teachers and closing that loop of communication. But the dialogue around the suspension data was a really eye-raising kind of conversation, because as it turns out, the data on this year, we had the highest level of suspensions for quite some time. And that was juxtaposed to our implementation of restorative practices. And so what we're getting is there's a lot of different interpretations to what's really going on, some of them accurate, some of them not. I'm not at all advocating that we need to suspend more kids, and I'm not advocating that we need to stop suspending kids. Like, there's a natural, there are behaviors that's going to happen, and when students violate particular rules or violate rules in a particular way, there are going to be outcomes that could include separation from school for some time. The conversation around how do we balance those two things, and whether or not there's the first responsibility is to accept responsibility for your actions and then receive those consequences, or is it to focus on restoration of the relationship that got into that conflict to start with, or is it a teeter-totter that might change as time happens? One of the great dialogues that came out of that is both of those take time. And so time in a school district our size, time in any school district is a resource, and resource has more needs. If we need more time to have those conversations, the only way we can do that is add staff. And so that might be a conversation that this task force takes on and comes to us later and says, we're not meeting the needs of the system because we're limited on the amount of resources that we can allocate to deliver upon that. And that's not necessarily system-wide. That might be pocketed in schools where there's a higher incidence of behavior issues, those kinds of things. And so how does that, when we talk about equity versus equality, giving to all of our 19 elementary schools the exact same, here's the recipe to fix your problems, is not going to be the way to solve this. And so this, while we're starting on what's the lowest hanging fruit and what are the things that we can do right now, every one of these conversations will eventually end up in where do we need more so that we can do a better job with.
So have you had any conversation within this task force about social media, technology, our use of technology in the schools? Because it seems like, that could devote our board an entire
It was
work
actually one of
session.
the biggest themes that came up when we first started talking about things. So that's, for example, one of the things that I would expect to see, I know it'll be on the middle school, and I don't know yet on the high school, but is cell phones out and away during the school day. And that was an effort this year that was started. And it wasn't perfect, but I can tell you the difference between being in the middle schools this year and being in the last year with cell phones was markedly different. So that's just a beginning thing, Amy. Obviously, it's way, way deeper than that, but that definitely emerged from the group as, when we looked at the iceberg, like what are the things underlying some of the struggles that kids are having.
Well, yeah, and that seems like a low-hanging fruit that costs us nothing, just to say to kids, your cell phones cannot be visible during your school day.
Amy, I can concur. As a middle school parent, the difference between last year and this past year was amazing. I do think it's another example of educating and partnering with families, because I think one of the most impactful things that I had as a parent was when my school's principal said, if you need to contact your child, do not text them. call Tammy in the office and we will send a note. But if you text them, you are undermining our ability to have their cell phones out. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So yeah, a lot of work there, but it was, from a middle school parent perspective, so appreciated this year.
Sidebar antidote on that particular issue. You know, we're in the middle of collecting information for a lawsuit right now, and the estimate of the amount of discipline referral issues that have connections back to social media in some form or another right now across the system is averaging around 75 to 80%. Please don't put that in the paper.
Well, and if we're doing it at the middle school level, why not institute it at the high school level as soon as possible? Same
No,
policies.
it's really interesting. I subbed for a teacher who has a very strict, a high school teacher. It's not school-wide, but he has a very strict policy. And I was amazed. The kids were absolutely compliant. And I maybe, you know, try it with the sub, but boy, that phone was I said, oh, I thought, I was like, oh yeah. So I would love to see that, but I'm not the person making this agreement. This is happening among the high school people, so.
I do have a question about that because I've heard mixed things of, oh, sorry. I've heard mixed things with regard to, it seems like a very simple fix, but I do hear concerns from teachers where they're really struggling. And I think, I'm not sure who or how or the context, but I'm curious how much support teachers are getting with a follow-through of no phones out or using your iPads appropriately. And I think sometimes this connects back to classroom management or experience or seasoned teachers or support within, you know, departments. But what have you heard, or how can that be addressed further?
I can speak to the middle schools because I think when they decided to really bear down on this, they as a team, the middle school administrative team said, how are we going to handle it? And basically, you know, the phones get taken away and that goes through, becomes an office referral, and, you know, and there are escalating consequences. And again, I don't want to say it's perfect because I can imagine somebody saying, well, that's not what happened at my school. But in general, that's what we saw happening. And so it took a really concerted effort from everyone, every adult working in the school for probably the first several months of the school year. And then it got way better. You know, I was helping in High Desert's cafeteria, and there are 300 kids in there. I didn't see, in fact, they don't even let iPads in their cafeteria. So there wasn't an iPad or a cell phone in sight through 2 lunches, you know, so.
Could that become a district-wide opportunity? I do hear a lot of students talking about the distractions of other students playing games on their iPads or the access to YouTube and how necessary those are. I mean, that's a whole nother thing. But if that has been successful in one middle school, perhaps an opportunity for others.
Yeah, I think it's the whole tight loose conversation, right? It's the whole idea, you know, do we have the authority to say at the district level, thou shalt not, and then finish that sentence? And the question then becomes, is that then implemented with fidelity? And I'll just be honest, this goes all the way back for me. I became an administrator back when pagers were an issue. This is not a new conversation. It depends on, like, if she's down the hall and I'm letting them use phones in my classroom and she's not, then she's gonna hear about that every day when kids come from my class to hers. And it just erodes over time. The ability to hold the line when you feel like you're the only one, or the administrator maybe doesn't follow up or does follow up and just doesn't get back to you, you can feel like that's the nature of this. It's a behavioral economics kind of issue, and it is tough. And so when we have a system-wide, everybody's nodding their heads like we're gonna do this together, that's a whole lot better than any policy this board can pass or something that I would say. It's a collective effort. And that's what we're seeking on this, and that's what we're saying. Is there value in us all doing this together? Because if we push out a policy, I mean, you've seen, like, We've pushed out policies and people are like, what are they thinking? This is dumb. And that gets right back to us and we're like, but this is a need. And so it's how do you build the why underneath this? And how do we then say, we're all gonna hold the line on this and we're not gonna give in? Because once you get a weak spot for whatever reason, and I'm not casting stones here, wherever the weak spots happen, boy, are they exploited. And it becomes very quick that the whole thing just falls down like a house of cards.
I do really appreciate you sharing those, the success with some of those, right? And the more we hear about some of those, I think the more people might have ideas of, oh, well, maybe this is something we look at in the future as a whole of middle schools or a whole of high schools. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you very much. As you can probably suspect, this is one that I think I can speak for myself. I hear a lot about from teachers and from parents, and so we obviously had a lot of questions on it because we hear a lot about it. So thank you. We will now move into board comments. Board comments are voluntary. They are not required. We will start at the end with Dr. Olson. Yeah? Sorry. Yes.
I haven't been very busy with school business in the last month, I have to admit. So I really don't have anything of particular interest to report.
This is just my first meeting, so I'm happy to be here. And I just got my badge, so thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you for our guests tonight who came and spoke and shared their thoughts, and that they are heard and listened to. And I also wanted to thank Brian around safe transportation, and that's something that I'm also deeply concerned about with our youth, and really the safety of all students in many capacities. And also wanted to thank you for the Culture and Climate Task Force update. That's really great to hear, and I'm really excited to hear more from the students also with the student council. What are we calling it again? Student voice. Thank you. Yeah, looking forward to having them participate and really just more empowering and enabling. And I just absolutely loved having that that student here today speak tonight. So, and welcome, Cameron. We're glad you're here.
Yeah, can't say I've really been doing much within our schools like Shirley. I love summer. I hope everyone is enjoying their summer. Welcome, Cameron. And really excited about the possibility of Ben Tech Academy becoming a really strong choice option within our school portfolio. I think it's a really exciting move for our community and our district, and an opportunity to better serve kids who want that experience at a really great school. So I really hope ODE supports this change.
And I have two things. One, I'd like to thank all the students from Ben Lapine, as well as the students in Central Oregon, for coming to the summer symposium that we had. We had 22 students from different backgrounds, primarily African-American, show up to the symposium, and I thought it was phenomenal for them to be able to have that environment, for them to feel safe and be able to do the necessary things that we need to do and continue to grow that program. I think it's gonna be phenomenal. Like it says, it's not about me, it's, there it is. All right, so one of the moms was here from one of the students. So anyway, it's awesome. And then this past weekend, I was able to go to a conference, it's called School Board Partners, and it allows board members who are board members of color and their allies to be able to come together and talk about what we do and don't know about being board members. I thought it was phenomenal to be able to go and see not some of the new people who were in the cohorts, but some of the past cohorts and the growth we've learned in terms of helping with policy, helping with procedure, but helping overall understand what this process looks like becoming an elected official, but at the same time, how do you get support from your communities and how we can continue to help one another. So it was a great fellowship and I enjoyed myself and I was a panelist. And it was great to be able to have my counterpart, Carrie Douglas, there to be able to talk about some of the things we did too. And we really got to talk about how we, as a board, communicate a little bit better and very transparent. And I was able to applaud that because I think we do a phenomenal job of really having those hard conversations and leaning to the uncomfortableness and growing. So I thought that was being able to be amplified at that conference. So I had a great opportunity to do that.
Thank you. I want to appreciate all of the families and especially the students that came to give public comment tonight, graduates and current students. It's a really special moment for us as board members when students come. So thank you so much. I also want to appreciate my vice chair, Marcus LeGrand. I'm looking forward to another year with you and with this board. And then I want to welcome Cameron. I am so excited to have you on this board. You bring an abundance of riches, an embarrassment of riches to this board in terms of your experience, and really look forward to serving with you.
Can I forgot one thing, I'm sorry, actually two things. So there, last June, that was like, yeah, so, yeah, last month. So there is Juneteenth, which of course the Fathers Group is, puts that on. And just also wanted to acknowledge the students who were there and who, volunteered and who, just helped put on another wonderful event. And then also the Students in Alliance. So the next weekend was Pride, and also seeing students and our booth was amazing. And so well done. Yeah.
Thanks. All right. With that said, our next regular business meeting is scheduled for August 8th, 2023, and this meeting is adjourned.